A friend of mine, I won't use her real name, let's call her Jen, texted me last year with 3 words. I did it. She'd just crossed $250,000 in net worth. 10 years of saving, a promotion she'd fought hard for, a house that had finally started building real equity. She felt, for the first time in a decade, like the ground under her was solid. 8 months later, she was on the phone with me, quieter than usual, telling me she just made the worst financial decision of her adult life. A business investment. A sure thing, a friend had told her. She'd put in almost $40,000. It's gone now. Here's the thing that stuck with me about her story, and the reason I'm making this video. Jen wasn't reckless before she hit $250,000. She was actually one of the most careful people I knew with money. Something changed after she crossed that number. Not her intelligence, not her values, something quieter than that. If you're anywhere near this milestone, coming up on it, just past it, or you crossed it a while ago and things have felt a little different since, I want you to stay with me for the next 15 minutes, because there's a specific psychological shift that tends to happen right around $250,000, and almost nobody talks about it because on paper, it looks like the opposite of a problem. It looks like confidence. It looks like finally arriving. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. Let's start with what's actually happening underneath the surface, because it's not what most people assume. $250,000 is a real number. It's not small. For most people, it represents genuine, hard-won progress. Years of decisions that compounded into something substantial. Nobody's questioning that part. What changes, though, isn't the money itself. It's how you relate to it. There's research in behavioral finance around something called competence-based overconfidence. Basically, once someone accumulates enough evidence that they're good at money, they start unconsciously extending that confidence into areas where they actually have no particular expertise at all. Being disciplined about saving and being qualified to evaluate a private business investment are 2 completely different skill sets, but they don't feel different from the inside. They both just feel like, I'm good with money now. I think about it a little like someone who's been a careful, defensive driver for 15 years, never gotten a ticket, never been in an accident. That track record is real, but it doesn't automatically make them qualified to, say, drive a race car at high speed. The skills don't transfer just because the underlying confidence does. And yet, that's essentially what happens financially, right around this milestone for a huge number of people. Here's the specific mechanism. At lower net worth levels, most people are naturally cautious, almost by necessity. There isn't much room for a mistake, so the instinct to double-check, to ask for advice, to move slowly, stays switched on. But once there's real money sitting there, enough that a single win could meaningfully accelerate things, enough that other people start asking for your opinion, enough that you start getting invited into conversations you weren't part of before, the caution that protected you on the way up quietly starts to feel unnecessary. Almost like it belongs to an earlier, less capable version of yourself. It doesn't. That caution wasn't a phase you outgrew. It was the actual mechanism that got you here. I want to get specific here because overconfidence can sound abstract until you see the shape it actually takes. The first version is the one Jen experienced, the unsolicited opportunity. Once you cross a certain threshold, you start attracting a specific kind of attention. A coworker's cousin with a real estate deal, a friend starting a business, someone at a dinner party mentioning a can't-miss investment. These opportunities existed before too. The difference is that at $250,000, you finally have enough capital that saying yes feels possible instead of laughable, and enough recent financial wins that your instinct to say no has quietly gotten weaker. The second version is subtler, the abandonment of the systems that got you here. A lot of people who reach this milestone built it through some form of structure, automatic contributions, a specific allocation strategy, a habit of not checking the account every day. And then, almost without noticing, the structure gets treated as optional. I know what I'm doing now becomes the internal justification for skipping the boring parts. The parts that, ironically, were never about intelligence in the first place. They were about consistency. The third version is the one that shows up in lifestyle, not investing. It's the decision to stop tracking spending, not because tracking wasn't useful, but because it starts to feel beneath where you are now. There's a strange psychological discomfort in still budgeting carefully at $250,000. It can feel like you're not trusting your own progress. So people quietly stop right around the exact point where the numbers involved in each decision have gotten large enough that a mistake actually costs something real. And the fourth, maybe the most common, taking on complexity you don't actually understand, specifically because admitting confusion now feels different than it did before. At $50,000, asking a basic question about an investment felt normal. You were still learning. At $250,000, there's a quiet pressure to already know, and that pressure alone leads a lot of people to nod along in conversations they should be asking more questions in, and to sign things they haven't fully understood, because pausing to say, "Wait, can you explain that again?" suddenly feels like it doesn't match the level they think they're supposed to be at. None of these four patterns look reckless from the outside. They all look like someone who's arrived, someone who's confident, someone who's earned the right to move a little faster. That's precisely the disguise that makes this trap so effective. There's a reason this shift tends to cluster right around this particular number more than at $50,000 or $100,000. $250,000 sits at an interesting psychological crossing point. It's large enough to feel genuinely significant. Most people can't casually replace it if it disappears. But it's also large enough that a single opportunity, if it worked out, could meaningfully change the trajectory of someone's financial life. That combination is specific. Below this level, the money mostly feels like something to protect and grow slowly. Above a certain point, several million, say, people tend to have already built relationships with actual financial professionals, formal structures, teams. $250,000 often sits in an uncomfortable middle zone, too significant to be casual about, but not yet large enough that most people have built real institutional guardrails around it. There's also a social dimension that's specific to this range. $250,000 in net worth is roughly the point where, in a lot of social and professional circles, people quietly start being perceived as doing well rather than still figuring it out. That perception shift is subtle, but it changes behavior. When people around you start treating your financial opinions as more credible, it becomes easy to start believing you deserve that credibility across the board, not just in the narrow area where you actually earned it. And there's a generational piece worth naming, specifically for people in their late 30s through 50s. A lot of people in this age range are watching peers hit visible milestones. A bigger house, a business exit, a name that shows up somewhere impressive. Right around the same years, they're crossing this number themselves. That comparison creates a specific kind of urgency, a feeling that the safe, slow version of building wealth has worked, technically, but hasn't delivered the kind of dramatic outcome that would feel like real success by comparison. That urgency is exactly the emotional condition that makes a risky, unfamiliar opportunity look less like a gamble and more like a shortcut you finally earned the right to take. So knowing this pattern exists, what actually protects against it? I've thought about this a lot since Jen's call, and here's what seems to genuinely make a difference. First, build in a mandatory waiting period for any opportunity outside your existing plan. Not because your instincts are automatically wrong, but because the confidence that makes an opportunity feel urgent right now is exactly the thing that fades with a little distance. 30 days minimum for anything that wasn't already part of your strategy before you heard about it. If it's still compelling after 30 days of research, it was probably worth considering. If the urgency was the main argument for it, that's information too. Second, separate "I'm disciplined with money" from "I'm qualified to evaluate this specific thing." These are genuinely different skills, and treating them as one is where a lot of the damage happens. Being good at saving consistently says nothing about your ability to evaluate a private business, a real estate deal, or a complex investment structure. Those require their own specific expertise, and it's worth being honest, even a little uncomfortable, about where that expertise actually ends. Third, keep Keep the boring systems running, especially once they start to feel unnecessary. The automatic contribution, the monthly check-in, the spending awareness, these don't graduate out of relevance once you have more money. If anything, they matter more, because the dollar amounts involved in each decision have gotten larger, which means the cost of drifting away from the habit has gotten larger too. Fourth, normalize asking questions out loud, even when it feels like it should be beneath you by now. The discomfort of asking a basic question in front of people who might expect you to already know is real, but it's a much smaller cost than the alternative. Nobody who's actually good with money stopped asking questions. They just got more selective about which questions matter. Fifth, get a second, unbiased opinion before anything that would meaningfully change your risk profile, not someone with a financial interest in the decision. Someone whose only job is to ask you the uncomfortable question you might be avoiding asking yourself. This one thing, more than almost anything else, tends to catch the moment where confidence has quietly outrun actual understanding. None of these 5 things require you to become more cautious than you were before you hit this milestone. They just ask you to stay exactly as careful as the version of you that actually built the number in the first place. Jen's okay, by the way. The $40,000 is gone, but she's back to her old systems. The automatic contributions, the tracking, the questions she used to ask before she felt like she wasn't supposed to need to anymore. She told me something a few weeks ago that stuck with me. I think I forgot that being careful was the actual skill. I thought it was just a phase before I got good enough to stop. That's the whole trap, really, in one sentence. The caution isn't something you graduate out of. It's the thing that got you here, and it's still the thing that keeps you here, no matter what number is sitting in the account. If you're near this milestone, or you've noticed this shift in yourself already, I'd genuinely like to know, in the comments, tell me. Has your relationship with risk changed since you hit a certain number, even if you can't quite pinpoint when it happened? I read every comment, and honestly, this is one of those topics where hearing other people's specific experiences tends to help more than any general advice I could give. And if you've been building this picture with me through this series, you understand something most financial content never covers, that the danger at every stage is rarely about not having enough. It's usually about what happens the moment you start to feel like you finally do. Subscribe if you want to keep building this understanding with me, one honest, quiet video at a time. Until next time, take care of your money and take care of the confidence that comes with it. That part needs just as much attention as the number does.